Story 1. The Crawlspace. The first thing I noticed about the house was the smell. Not all at once. It came in waves, like something old and wet was breathing through the vents. The landlord told me it had been empty for a year, and that old houses always had a smell to them. I needed cheap rent and didn't push it. The place had one bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a living room with warped hardwood floors that dipped in the middle. At night, the floorboards popped loud enough to sound like footsteps, the kind that pause when you pause. On the third night, I was in bed when I heard scratching directly under me. Not mice, too slow, too deliberate. Scratch, scratch, pause. Then 3 hard knocks from under the floor. I sat up and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was pipes, wood settling, anything except what it sounded like. I barely slept. The next morning I looked around the outside of the house and found a small wooden hatch near the back porch, half hidden by weeds, a crawl space. I should have left it alone. Instead, I found a screwdriver, pried it open, and shined my phone light inside. The smell hit me so hard I gagged. The dirt under the house was black and damp. There were support beams, old insulation hanging down, and something pale near the far end. At first I thought it was trash bags. Then the light caught skin. It was a dog, or what had been one, split open from throat to belly, ribs showing through stringy meat, fur matted black with old blood. Flies covered it in a thick moving layer. I stumbled back and vomited in the grass. I called the landlord. He sounded annoyed, not shocked. He said he'd send somebody. Nobody came. That night, the scratching came back, louder now. Not under the bed this time, inside the walls. I followed the sound to the kitchen. It was coming from behind the cabinets, a dry scraping mixed with a wet dragging sound. Then I heard breathing, human breathing, fast and shallow. I backed out of the room and called 911. I whispered that someone was in my walls. Even saying it out loud made me feel insane. While I was on the phone, one of the cabinet doors slowly swung open by itself. Inside, where my pot should have been, I saw an eye looking back at me through a hole in the drywall, not blinking, just staring. I dropped the phone. The eye vanished. Then something slammed into the wall from the other side, hard enough to rattle every dish in the kitchen. The dispatcher kept asking if I was still there. I ran outside barefoot and waited in the yard until the police arrived. They searched the house. Then one of them found a narrow cutout behind the pantry shelves, covered by a false panel from the inside. It led to a gap between the walls and the crawl space under the house. That's where they found him. He was wedged in the dark, like he had grown there. Thin to the point of looking skinned, beard down to his chest, fingernails broken and caked with dirt. There was dried blood all over his shirt and around his mouth. Animal bones were scattered around him, some fresh, some not. When they pulled him out, he screamed so loud, one of the officers flinched. Not words, just raw animal noise. He fought like he was being burned alive. Then he bit one of them. He tore into him, latched onto the officer's forearm and ripped a chunk loose before they could pull him off. Blood sprayed across the pantry door. Later, I learned the previous tenant had disappeared, not moved out, disappeared, and the landlord had never reported it. They found what was left of that tenant deeper in the crawl space, under a sheet of plastic and dirt. Parts of the face were missing, the fingertips too. I moved out the next day, but what still wakes me up is not the body or the eye in the cabinet. It's that the police told me the man had been living inside the house for months, which means every night I heard footsteps above me. Sometimes they weren't the house settling. Sometimes he was just standing over my bed listening to me breathe. If something ever watches you while you sleep, you won't hear it coming. Subscribe and listen before it gets closer.